So today's meeting is really just show and tell. It could be show and tell just about anything, but I'm going to kick it off with the theme of sharing hobbies. Like if you created any applications to support a hobby, your own or somebody else's, we'll be sharing those today. So let's see. So this is my latest hobby. I couldn't pass up riding into a rainbow. What is going on with my tires? Because that's pretty. All right, screw it. Hey, leave it. All right, we're gonna turn into it once more. So anyway, what we're doing this is called dog mushing. It's people think of that as just being on the snow. But this is what we call dryland dog mushing, or sometimes they call it urban mushing. And I kind of discovered this accidentally. I used to have a little miniature pinscher, and I just had a street scooter, and I needed to run out her energy, especially we took her out for training and things like that. She was just so too hyper, so I'd run her for a mile and kind of wear her down just a little bit so you could function and obey commands and not go after a bunch of other dogs. Eventually, I met a bunch of people who were into this sport and learned that well, you could get a big old scooter with big mountain bike wheels and not have to fall so often. Which is what I was doing on a little street scooter when I was trying to run these bigger dogs. These dogs are only 35 pounds. They're German pinschers, but they really love to run. They do really well in San Jose. Um, so anyway, this week is my last week in it's like on this kind of international competition. It's mostly for fun. Most of the people doing it are just there for fun. You can tell by their scores. But some of us like kind of take it kind of seriously and get as many miles as we can get. And so these people are all over the world, and all they have to do is track their miles. Um, oh yeah, so this is the scooter I'm riding on, by the way. Not Mine's a little bit beefier than most people's, just because I wanted the extra traction. Because these dogs every once in a while want to chase a squirrel sideways, and or we're going downhill, and I need to be able to stop. And so this has dual disc brakes, hydraulic brakes, and if that doesn't stop well enough, I jump off and use my feet too. So yeah, even though they're only 35 pounds each, they have quite a pull, and they can accelerate like faster than you expect. And that's all the gear I'm wearing to try everything you see covered up there somewhere I've gotten hurt in the past. I'm even wearing a mouth guard in that thing, so I'm just making sure that I don't get hurt. So anyway, right now I'm involved in a stage race. It's called Iron Paws, and it goes on for 7 weeks. And each week, they put a cap on me because I was going out there 80 miles a week or something like that. They put a cap on me because I was like blowing everybody away. And so now everybody in the wheeled class are down to 40 miles. They want to make sure that nobody's killing their dogs just going out there because, yeah, it's tempting just to go out there and let your dog do all the work, and it could be this big heavy person and not doing anything. And your dog may not be suited for running that far anyway. So each week we submit our scores. And so over here on the left are the scores I've submitted for the previous 6 weeks. This is the last week I'm in. I'm submitting that. And by the way, our team name is Wabies Wasting in a Wanda Wind Windy Waterways Wipe the Wind, right? And yeah, they have it. You'll see a bunch of goofy names on here for their team names. But yeah, that's at the end of each week we get to see, who. Who's how we rank up among everybody else. But the problem with that is, well, the very first year that I played this, I think it was 2019 when I first participated in this. Or was it 2020? Yes, it's my fifth year. So yeah, 2020. So the first time I participated in this, my dog just got off. I only had one dog, and he just got off of 2 operations. He was just like 2 weeks before this started, and so I had to start him out really slow. And then we built up and to the point where we were doing more miles than anybody else. And um I was like, oh wow, might be able to make third place, but I lost. Only got fourth. I got fourth place. Didn't get quite the medal. And so at fourth place, and it kind of bugged me a bit, right? And the thing was, is we were racing against, at the time, they didn't have separate classes for scooter and kart. We were grouped up with the what's called bike jor, which is people on bikes, which they get to sit on their butts and they got gears helping them out. So they got a little bit of an easier time at it. But ever since then, that kind of bummed me out. And so I got really competitive about this and wanted to um, wanted to see if I could track my own scores and everybody else's to make sure I was going to beat them. So they ended up splitting up bikes and scooters into different classes, but I always had it out for them. So I'm always watching how their scores are doing and I'm comparing myself to the bikes because, to be honest, as you're going to find out, I'm like far ahead against anybody doing scooters at this point. So the first thing I did was, yeah, I just took, people tell you not to do this, but I just went out and grabbed, I think the FileMaker's contact database, the sample one, just as a starting point, and I added my runs to it and some URLs so I could do the tracking of my miles. And then for all the stuff for the tracking everybody else, I was able to download the roster for the participants, and you do all this in scripts and all the rankings. And so the yellow, it's just actually two different tables here with lots of different instances. So here's me tracking my miles, and this is my very last week. I only have 8 more miles this week to get my cap. This button over here, I'm able to put in my Strava runs. That way I can connect that up to all the stats that come out of Strava. Strava is like a running application. You can track biking or running, and it'll tell you how far you've gone and how many calories you supposedly burned and up and down, and show you the map that you ran on and everything. So it's kind of nice to have. It does all that for me, but I'm kind of keeping track of everything here along with the stages that I'm doing and how many miles total I've done. And so the big script in this thing is really, and I do this a lot. I have like so many little apps that I've created where I'm just doing screen scraping on websites. So I'm going to this website, insert from URL, grabbing everything and processing it to pull out the data so I can track it. Every once in a while I ask the person if hey, can I download the data straight from your database? Because she's using a database out there. Like it's MySQL, but they haven't offered that to me yet. So this is how I'm doing so far. I created a graph to see, how am I doing, right? I actually didn't download, I didn't download the very first stage. I was kind of being lazy and I figured, I always win all the time. So anyway, I wasn't going to do it, but I'm now a part of a pack where this matters to more people. And so I started downloading the data so I could share all that with other people that are in my pack. And so, yeah, that's me down at the bottom. Like I'm kind of like 2 stages ahead of everybody else that's doing scooter right now. But yeah, you can see the progress, and this was kind of useful for some of the other people. Again, this is my true nemesis class. This is the bike tour people who beat me the very first year when we were all in the same class, and I've always had it out for them ever since. I'm always trying to beat. So you say I'm only 2 points ahead. What is this? 327 points. Yeah, I'm just a couple points ahead of this person. It's by chance because it has like fun little games we play along the way too. Like we played bingo, and I won the bingo game, and she didn't. So now I'm 2 points ahead of her. So most of my teammates are actually doing what's called Canicross, and there's the most participants in that because it doesn't take much gear. You just have harnesses and they have this gear that they wrap around their around their butt pretty much because that's pretty much the most stable part on your body when you're running with a dog pulling you. And it just so happens the top 3 runners are in my pack. So we're blowing away all the other packs too. So it's this county, and because these people are from all over the world, a lot of them originates up in Oregon, but we happen to be beat everybody because we have the best weather, really. Everybody else could be having like really severe storms, ice storms, blizzards, and things all over the place. And even when it's rainy, we can still get out there and run our dog. So, and we do have a lot of competitive people out here. So, um, And the hikers, I mean, this I'm just showing the hikers here. This guy's on my team. He was in first place, and you could see like right here on the graph, he was in first place all the way up through stage six, no, stage five, and then Susan like did 88 miles and just starting to blow him out of the water. So, it's just different things we could demonstrate and show, like, if somebody's catching up to you, because just seeing those stages one score at a time, it wasn't really telling us if somebody was catching up to you or not. Um, so that's that. So anyway, that's my one main hobby that I track with FileMaker. This is somebody else's hobby, and I didn't create this app originally, but somebody came to me, they found out I did FileMaker and said, "Hey, could you help us do this, take care of our Ikebana database?" And I did a little bit, pretty much just for free. I helped them out. And and it's just another example of it's a hobby that they do, and they're not making any money off of it. They just buy the flowers that they need for the people who participate, and then they show their flowers. It's Japanese flower arranging. If you didn't know what ikebana is, I didn't know either until I got found this database and went to one of their shows. But yeah, they have a member form. They track all the materials so they can pick their materials off the list, quickly add it to this arrangement form here. Again, I didn't really create any of this stuff, but yeah. Not that my layouts look much better, but I pretty much help them out using, and these are their display cards and their shopping list that they go out with. So it was pretty useful, and it's like, yeah, this is the only thing with it is they needed to be able to share this to other people who needed to be able to data entry on this, and it was kind of complicated because they didn't have a server, they weren't spending any money. There's only one person had a copy of FileMaker, and I just thought, so it would have been a really good candidate for something like a freemium version of FileMaker, because then people just doing a hobby and aren't, they're not going to spend hundreds of dollars to go out and do something in support of their hobby unless, well, maybe some people do. I would, but not people who aren't who don't know FileMaker, don't know enough to know how useful it could be. So, I mean, it's a hard sell for somebody who's not planning on making any money off of their hobby. Um, so that's that. This is, so one of my other hobbies was essentially homeschooling 6 kids. Actually, my wife did most of that, but every once in a while I had to go in there and teach them something. And one of these things that really bugged me is when kids were playing games that didn't take any thought, like Chutes and Ladders, and this is the game of war. And when I saw somebody playing, don't play that game. You don't have to do it. There's no thought involved, right? In order to demonstrate that and maybe show them how to create an application, we created this application together. And it's just if anybody's familiar with the game of war, it's just a high card game. You just split up the cards between two people and you just high card right down the deck. And if the two cards match, like if you go down this deck, and by the way, when you're playing the game, you can't see the cards. I'm just showing them here. But as you go down, you see the high card here is 8, so the 8's going to get this 2 and it's going to go to the bottom of their deck. 10 is, 10 and 8 are here. The 8 is going to go to this player number 1. And then you see this tie, right? Whenever there's a tie, then what happens? You take 3 cards, put them face down, and then I think that's how it is, 3 or 2. And then the third one or the fourth one you do face up, and that person wins all the cards in the stack. So yeah, so we created this little shuffle thing here. Whoops. Oh, oh no, this is a video, so I can just play it. So here I am playing one card at a time. And
War.
I don't know if you could hear that. Actually, with the original version of the game, when you opened up the game, it played the tune "War." What is it good for? That was the theme of the whole
War.
game. And actually, each one of these battles you could hear gunshots and artillery fire and things like that. It's not doing any of those things anymore. This
War.
game kind of broke a little bit over time. This is a really old
War.
game. I think it was an FP7 file. Um, but yeah, it shows other things statistically, so you can try to figure out, well, who's going to win. Like the average value shows there, the total value of all the cards, and so on. And so you could do some maybe guessing and betting on who's going to win based on all of that. This one only runs like 120 something
War.
rounds, But yes, this could easily go into over 1,000 rounds of, so this game could take a long time. And over here, the way I set this up, this is just two portals. So if you were maybe designing a card game, I don't know how somebody else would do it, but this is just 52 cards, 52 records, and what I did is which card belongs to which player, and then display those in the portal. So all the cards that belong to player one are in portal one, and all the cards that belong to player two are in portal two. And and then I display the full card of the top one at the top here, and that's just how it goes. So that was supporting that. Um, okay, so this is another little homeschooling project. I was reading Lord of the Rings with my kids. All right, two at a time. So I've read gone Lord of the Rings three times with kids, and they got really good at reading, and they were like, "Wow, you guys are so articulate, and you guys can read these words." I got after just a few chapters, I think these are really good readers, right? And one day I asked them a question about what we were reading, and I found out they didn't understand like a lot of what they were reading because they didn't like they could pronounce these words, but they didn't understand what a lot of them meant. And they never even bothered to look up what they meant. It just blew my mind. It's like, what? How could you read things and do all this work and not know what you're reading? And which is just like adults, to be honest, but it's just on a different level. And so again, together we created this little dictionary quizzing program. This thing could actually pronounce the words for you. You could click on this over here, and it would give you I don't know if you can see my cursor, but you could click on this little dictionary, and it would go out and look up the word for you. They can copy and paste it in here, and when this empty field here, you can actually click in the field, and it would show you the definition. So you could quiz yourself, right? Um, and so it was that kind of thing. And they even had a place where they could put in pictures of the object that they wanted the definition for. So they were generating this dictionary of all these words they didn't know, just as they were reading through the Hobbit and then all three parts of the Lord of the Rings, right? And unfortunately, they get only certain kinds of words because J.R.R. Tolkien is really into landscapes and plants and flowers and a lot of medieval type of things. So, but yeah, my most interesting story out of that whole experience was this one, where they were like, I told them because they were building in their word list, and it got tedious. We're filling in the book and the chapter where it came from. I said, oh, all you have to do is once you make all your words from that book and chapter, you can just like put in your book number, the chapter and the book, and then you could do a replace field contents and just fill in the whole thing. You wouldn't have to do each one individually. But I told them to be careful when you do that because there's no undo, right? Well, one day somebody was in the definition field when they did that, and and it just ironically I think the word was livid. Oh yeah, there it is. Word was livid, and the definition for that, of course, is furiously angry, and they wiped out their entire all the definitions for the dictionary they had been building, and there was no backup. So, and I tell that story whenever I show anybody this feature, any user of this feature in FileMaker. Say this, be very careful, right? I mean, we have backups, of course, on the work that I do, but unfortunately, my kids did not have backups. So that was that. Um, Again, we had a nerdy family. I don't know, they're not so nerdy, but I am at times. And we celebrate a thing called Pi Day, which is a March 14th, right? 3.14. And we were just going through all kinds of trivial things about pi, right? And so I got curious, and I don't know, trivia entertains me too much, unfortunately. And so I downloaded 314 million decimal points of pi and say, oh yeah, what's in here, right? And like looking for repetition. It would be interesting to know where the repetitions are. You get to the last point, and somebody pointed this out before. If you can memorize all the way to some repetition that goes like 3 or 4 times, then you can just pretend like, oh, it's just 3.1415, 666677777. You just pretend like it goes on like that. But as you know, pi does not repeat itself. So I would just do again trivial things like, hey, 1968. Where does that show up? Well, it only first shows up after 11,000 digits, and then all of a sudden shows up again. It's just weird things like that, right? So, in any case, that's that. Oh, oh yeah, where is, trying to remember how to view my notes. This is Keynote. Um, where's my presenter display? There it is. There we go. All right, so this diagram represents the first explicitly hyperlinked collection of documents in history. This one is showing 63,779 cross-references. Whoops. Cross-references that were connected all the way back in the 15th century. What made that possible was applying a consistent addressing system to the text of all the documents. The interesting thing about these connections is that people started making all these hyperlinks only a few years after they first applied an addressing system to the text. We did the same thing, of course, with electronic documents and the World Wide Web, like 400 years later. And shortly after that, after we came up with some consistent, oh yeah, I mean, well, we did that after some consistent document anchor addressing system that's called World Wide Web, and we have HTTP for all that. And now we're doing it again for semantic search with capabilities by having a sort of logically defined addressing system. The other interesting thing about this early example of hyperlinking is that this collection of 66 documents were written over 1,600 years apart in 3 different languages and on 3 different continents and by 40 different authors. It's certainly the most analyzed, if not over-analyzed book in all of history. And these 63,000 hyperlinks only cross-referenced by chapter. So since the 15th century, there's like at least 340,000 verse by verse cross-references hyperlinked by humans. And all this before humans started applying AI for further analysis, which people are doing now. So as you've already seen, I enjoy looking into trivial patterns, and I thought I'd do my part to make things worse by importing the whole Bible into FileMaker, right? And just for fun, right? So what is that? Like 31,000? Yeah, 31,000 verses. And so I imported that, and so I could analyze some of the things in there that couldn't be easily found by searching online. The first thing that had me curious is, well, how long it takes to read passages of text out loud. Like, what makes a bigger difference, the character length or the word count, or something in between? Do long unfamiliar names make a difference? How much difference does it take? Does a long list of numbers, does that make a big difference in how slow somebody reads a passage? Because there's lots of passages that have lots of numbers in them. Does repetition make a big difference? Or do professional readers, because I'm able to compare this to professional readers, reading audiobooks, do professional readers meter themselves out to avoid rushing through repetition? I was getting some of these answers by comparing text to freely available audiobooks and recordings online. So while looking at repetitive text, I found other trivial things like which verses were most repeated in the Bible. And so this is the most repeated verse in the entire Bible, 72 times. So now that was interesting. So it wouldn't be fair of me to publicly dabble in religion without also dabbling in politics. It seems that I've got a new Department of Government Efficiency that's all the rage lately. Not that I'm presenting anything one way or the other about what they are doing or how they're doing it, but it does remind me of the time I took up like an unpaid hobby of trying to evaluate government waste. I work for the state. In general, you can look at who's getting paid and how much they're getting paid and how often they're getting paid, and quickly assume that there's something suspicious or that maybe it's completely legitimate. You're just looking at it. Further investigation proves that some of these expenditures were either completely productive or necessary, or and sometimes you look at seemingly practical expenditures and you find out the waste is much worse than you imagined, but you couldn't find that out really just by looking at receipts and things. an expenditure. You really can't see all that. You actually have to see the history of the matter, or you have to talk to people who were involved with projects, or know the business and systems to know where the true redundancies are and which of those utilized systems are more efficient than others, and at the development level and at the production level. Those are two different things. Years ago, I gave a long, tedious presentation on that. What did I go? Oh, the $2.6 million developer. And pretty much covered this, how I made this, and pretty much my response to this an application. I won't say who made it. There was an application that somebody sold for over $1 million, and it took a lot of people's time and effort to get that thing running, and it actually never did any of the 3 features they bought it for. And I ended up actually doing those features in FileMaker. So anyway, the other little point here is that, it's fashionable for government institutions to claim transparency, but that comes with caveats. You notice right here, like here, like this, the state was claiming transparency, but the truth is their database of transparency only includes payments over 50,000. So you could easily pay, 49,900 every month, and that's not going to show up on their transparency reports. So anyway, that's a bunch of samples of what I had for my hobbies there. And who's next? Any questions?
Back on the dog mushing, what breeds do they typically use for that?
Oh yeah, mostly. I mean, so in my area, all the people in the hobby in this area are almost always like the snow breeds, the like Alaskan Huskies, Malamutes, Siberian Huskies, things like that. And so that's most common. The funny thing about that, because I live in an area where the weather never really gets that cold. I mean, we think of it as cold here when it gets like 40, but those dogs are really not at peak efficiency until like it's almost zero, right? Where they could just run, and that's when they're doing the Iditarod, and they can go over 100 miles a day in snow, right? And pulling somebody who's not helping them. I mean, there's usually large teams of them doing this, but it's amazing what they can do when they're not being overheated. So my dogs, because they're small and don't have very much hair, they are actually the the best dog in this area, right? In our group of dogs, all the big furry dogs poop out after 10 miles, and my dogs still are ready to go another 10. And so and I've run them up as warm as like 65, 70, although I've been avoiding that lately ever since we ran into a rattlesnake. But it's just you have to have plenty of water when they start getting warm like that. Um,
What breed did
but
you
yeah,
say they were?
uh-huh.
What breed were they?
Oh, German Pinschers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a predecessor to all the other pinchers, essentially. It's an old breed. Any other
Can you
questions?
bet on the races?
These ones, no, we don't. We'd get in trouble probably if we did. But yeah, because it's really all supposed for fun. Yeah, we don't get any money out of this or anything. It's they get everybody gets the medal for participating, but they do recognize people who are first, second, and third. So, and that's generally what I'm aiming
Interesting.
for. Yeah, they don't really make races for my kind of dog because what we're doing well at is distance, right? It doesn't, they can sprint pretty well, but there's always bigger, faster dogs like greyhounds, right? That of course they're going to go faster, but they're not going to go faster for 20 miles. So these dogs will actually go up for 20 miles. And actually, my male, he went out with me 52 miles in one day, and it got to the end of the day, I got to this dog park. He still wanted to keep going. He was actually picking up speed by the end of the day, and it was like he had the second wind. But then the next day he was really sore, so we don't do that anymore. All right. Any other questions?
More of a comment. I dropped links to the historic $2.6 million dev presentation
Mm,
in the chat.
yeah, it's something I didn't listen in the background, but yeah. Well, who's next? If there's no other questions.
Um, Mr. Handicapper, are you good to go?
Sure. Can you share my screen?
Oh yeah. Will it let you?
Eric, I think that's you as co-host
Let
or
me
as
see.
host rather. Let me see if I have the ability.
Allow. Put in waiting room. Will it let you share? Or did?
Yeah.
Uh, uh, Eric, I don't know. Did you give him present Mr. Handicapper green button
Well,
bottom
he
middle?
shared earlier. I did. I stopped the sharing earlier, but I didn't think it would actually make it so he couldn't share again. Let's see.
Maybe with the screen recording it needs a redo. Who knows?
Um.
Dave is official name of Mr. Handicapper. Do you have, Dave, do you have a
Share
green
button.
button bottom middle?
What kind of button?
Uh,
Green.
green bottom middle. You might not, but if you do,
You might have to
I
hover
I
over.
don't see it, but I don't see green too well.
Uh,
okay, hold on one sec. Eric, can you make me like co-host or
your
the,
co-host.
okay, hold on. So I don't see, okay, there we go.
There he goes. Who did?
I
Oh, he
just
did.
have to reshare it on my
All
end.
right, you have successfully, we can see your screen.
Yeah.
Okay, ready to go?
Yeah. I see it.
Okay, well, thanks for giving me the opportunity to do a little show and tell here. What you're looking at has really not been seen by another human being for at least 5 years. It is an evolution of my lifelong interest in horses, which became evolved into interest in horse racing, breeding, horse racing, and horse breeding after I get out of college and the service. It evolved from a commercial application that I had a little bit of success selling way earlier in life, back in the day when you could still produce runtimes and send them out as demos and actually produce solutions to sell them as, runtimes. That opportunity is long gone. So I don't know if it'll ever come back in my lifetime to a point where I would be able to sell anything anymore of any kind. Um, this is a hobby application for me right now. Nobody else uses it but me. Although I do have some aspirations to use it to teach people about the sport of thoroughbred horse racing and handicapping thoroughbred races, um, on a remote basis, more like we're doing now, to do remote Zoom educational sessions for people who are interested. So I built this application around a UI that makes it possible to quickly share different concepts, data, whatever that they might need to know to become like a beginner interest or intermediate interest or advanced interest. Those possibilities are all here. On the right side, you see there, I'm a little borrowing a little bit of the terminology from the Severance show, if you're familiar with that from Apple TV. Because I realize that what a lot of us do, and what I'm doing in particular, is a refinement of macro data that is available commercially, uh, to be used for various purposes in thoroughbred racing. Are any of you Severance fans?
Oh, you mean the TV show?
The Apple TV show, right?
I've seen it yet. It,
No.
I'll drop a link in the chat.
Well, in any case, one of the major premises of the show is that there's a department in the company that all they do, it's called the Macro Data Refinement Division, and all they do is look at numbers continuously until they find a pattern of numbers that they feel good about, and then they pass those numbers along to management for purposes that nobody really understands what they do with it, but they think it's not anything good. So the data that I get to use this app is shown here in this excerpt. What you're looking at is a flat file for a partial record from one horse that I buy on a daily basis for each race card that I want to handicap or teach somebody about. There are other XML sources for this that would probably be more advantageous to use. But when I tried them, I had a lot of trouble translating XML into the FileMaker version of XML. So I didn't go any further with that. So what you're looking at is part of one record. On a typical race day, there would be 100 records like this for the average number of races on a day. And so the first thing I've got to do is to refine this data, gets converted to .cvs, which then gets imported into a preprocessor that starts to crunch the numbers and represent them much differently than what you see here. The raw data fields that come down from the sources number about maybe 1,500. Over the course of time, I've managed to convert those to 15,000 in order to produce this UI and this solution. And it's at a hobby point here now in my life where what I'm seeking to do is just to make it more perfect as much as I can. Like I say, I may never get the chance to show it or use it with other people, but I'm still sort of pointing in that direction that it might be used that way for whoever I leave this to after I depart the planet. Okay, so let me explain a little bit about the UI here. It's called the bullet point handicapper for a reason. In the nomenclature of horse racing, the data that I just showed you, the raw extract, gets converted by a lot of the suppliers of past performance information. This is a typical racing program for a race at a track in Philadelphia. And one of the great difficulties the industry has now is that it's incredibly difficult to teach people about this topic because of its incredible complexity. You go kind of starry-eyed when you look at all these numbers the way they present them. This is the kind of thing that you would see on a racing program, what they call a past performance program, or a racing program that they sell at the racetracks. And if you look down here in the lower right, you'll see a black dot there. In the nomenclature of racing, that's referred to as a bullet point because it means that that particular workout that a horse worked out on that particular day was the fastest workout of the day at that distance, at that location. So that's the background of what a bullet point traditionally has meant. I've used that in a different way for what I'm doing. I call this the bullet point educational system because each time someone visits one of the screens that you can reach navigationally from these labels and buttons, you can click on a button that allows you to say that you're done with that screen for that race, or you're done with all of the screens for all races on this card. So if you click on that and then you come back to the main menu, you'll see that now there is a bullet point there. So what this is accomplishing is handicapping horse races is a very complex, sometimes lengthy process if you're going to do it right. And sometimes if you do multiple tracks in the course of a few days, you lose track of what you've evaluated and what remains to be evaluated. So this bullet pointing symbolism allows you to indicate to yourself that, okay, I've already evaluated for that factor and I don't need to do it again, and go on to the next one. This is a multi-track application where you can handicap or teach about multiple tracks on any given day. Just a little bit of further background on me. This has evolved from lifelong interest in horses and eventually thoroughbred racing, breeding. Back while I was still working in healthcare IT, I had a side hustle going selling software for the management of breeding farms and racing stables, and to some degree, a runtime handicapping application that sold for quite a while. But as time has progressed, and FileMaker has made its changes, this market is not going to tolerate having to buy a FileMaker license every time they want to make use of this. So I've decided to convert it to an educational platform for use by anyone who's interested in teaching others more about the sport, which is something that's desperately needed right now because the sport is circling the toilet because of casinos earlier in the game, and now sports betting, is really having a horrible impact on it. Sports betting is so much easier and less complex to play compared to this, but the industry has never really done a good job of trying to teach people how to do it. So continue on here. As I said, I do data refinement. The one screen that I showed you, let me show you another one here. You click on that, every one of those beige labels are navigational buttons that take you to another data component that should be evaluated in a typical race. And so one level of refinement takes all of that raw data and displays it out in a logical fashion where items of information are related to each other and allows you to make a conclusion for that particular factor. This is probably the least elegant thing that I've done. Each screen has something like that. The most elegant that I've done is something that I now call the form cycle EKGs, taking advantage of that acronym in a unique way to describe equine kinematic graphics, which describes the objects in motion, which in this case are the horses. So what you're looking at in this display, let me get another one from another race, a little more done, well done. Here's one. This infographic displays the horses, what they call a form cycle. It's a combination of what races they have run in and workouts that they have performed to the extent that the raw data source gives them to me in any particular day. Part of in the background is I've got a lot of scripts that run that rank 750,000 workouts every day before any of this data gets processed. That took a bit of time and effort. The graphics are meant to show you the progress the horse might be making or not making, and to what extent it's ready for its next race. Let's see, what else can I show you? The labels up here are navigational to the same extent that they are down here, but these are race numbers. So if you want to activate a new race, you can start here and pick a race on the screen, and this could be as many as 100 different races from different tracks across the country. I'm only showing one here. When you activate that race, then these numbers for navigation to other races on that same race card allow you to do that very easily. You can also find a race using this series of buttons here to look for them that way. I don't particularly use it because I find the other navigational tools to be much better. There are literally over 75 different horse racing handicapping factors that one can demonstrate and teach about using these screens. All of them are named here. The ones that you see have bullets next to them mean that I don't need to bother with them anymore. I need to go on to the ones that I've not evaluated yet. So for example, this shows how a horse performs on a dirt surface. If I click on that, it'll show me what that horse's performance record is on that particular surface. And then when I'm done with that, then again, I click that I've done it and go back to the main menu, and the black bullet shows there to indicate that that has been accomplished. So that's the essence of it. What I use it for myself is for occasional actual playing races. I don't do that much anymore. What I do more occasionally is to play in handicapping contests and tournaments, which are ever more prominent than they've ever been, to the extent that if you win some of the precursor tournaments, you are eligible to compete for what they refer to as Handicapper of the Year, which is like the Super Bowl of horse racing handicapping that's done in Las Vegas in February, which with a winner's pool that's mounted to $750,000 now. So it's trying to approach the kind of paybacks that poker has arrived at with its contests and tournaments. I don't think I'll ever get there. I've won a few of the precursor tournaments. I do pretty well on them. You don't spend as much money on them when you play them as opposed to playing race by race pari-mutually, where you're playing based on the odds, competing against a whole lot of other people, including very elegant computer syndicates out of Hong Kong and other places that have mainframes operating in a similar fashion as what I'm showing here, but in a much more extensive way. They are staffed by people who are referred to as quants, who have built algorithms to very delicately measure not only the patterns of a horse's performance, but the patterns of the betting that's taking place on individual races. And so they make their money not necessarily by winning races, but by the rebates they get from the racetracks to use them. And so all they need to do is win 10% of their races in order to make a profit every year on the rebates that they earned from the racetracks that allow them to do this. The other thing that they're allowed to do that the average fan cannot do is they have electronic access to the pari-mutuel pools, so they can aggregate thousands of bets and post them into the pari-mutuel system electronically in the last second before the races go off. And in all those thousands of bets, they've built algorithms that kind of guarantee that they can't lose money. So that's the other side of the industry that's hurting it badly from a retail standpoint, because what people are finding is that when they play the races in the way that most average citizens usually do, you might be looking at a horse that you want to play that's going off at 5-1 just before the gate opens, and find out after the race is over that it is now 2-1. So what you thought you were going to get paid back in dollars turns out to be a much lower number. And you might not have played that horse if you thought that was all you were going to get. But that's because these syndicates can pump in those thousands of bets literally microseconds before the pari-mutuel window closes. And they have this serious deleterious effect on the odds that the average customer sees.
So you can't have a locked-in bet,
Have I?
locked-in early bet?
Yeah, you can do that, but you could lock in a bet at a certain pari-mutuel number that you want, and the various advanced deposit wagering services will not acknowledge that bet if it goes off at a no lower number than what you want it to be.
Wow.
So there's a lot of complexities in this industry. Within this application in here, I do have what I refer to as a tote word tracker. I have a body language inspection scoring system. So built it for maximum user friendliness. It is not technically elegant under the hood. There's a lot of things I know that I still need to do to make it better. For example, on any one of these screens that I'm showing you here, there are arrows. Well, if there's a screen for a particular horse itself, let's say this one here, these arrows here navigate you from one horse to the next, but the back navigation doesn't always apply, and I haven't found a good way to mix up individual back navigations to a back navigation that affects the entire number of horses on the card. So I have not had any help from any other FileMaker developers on this. I started to think through ways that this might be usable by people other than me after I'm gone. So for that purpose, I did a trial run of this using FileMaker Cloud over the last 2 weeks, just to be sure that navigational aspects of it worked okay, which they did. But I found other things that I didn't like about FileMaker Cloud administrative usage in moving files up and down between the cloud and the local location where they are. So I'm still going to be looking for other hosts that can solve that problem in a least expensive way. And I'll probably not get to the point before I'm gone where I can actually put that into operation, but I can leave it as something that's usable by whoever takes this over after I leave. I did tell you that I started using FileMaker in the 80s in FileMaker 2. I was thrilled to find it because I had just gotten done with a course in COBOL, and I just found the ability to use human language in FileMaker to be far superior. And I stayed with it over the years, and currently I'm version 21. And I'll probably be, staying with it as long as I can. There are a lot of popovers deployed here. The beige buttons are usually navigational. There are others that are popovers, like this tells you what the conditions of that particular race are. These are not something to evaluate, but something that you need to know about. So these popovers are populated in various locations. Sometimes they lead to other navigational buttons. Sometimes they just show you information that's useful. I use them as places to add additional training to each screen that can be used during training sessions. So here's a popover that shows you what calculations are deployed on that particular screen to show you the results that you're looking at. So when it comes down to it, horse racing is a very complex milieu of language, nomenclature, numbers, and symbols that are very difficult to learn. Took me years to get to the point where I am. I can see why there's little interest or appetite for younger people to spend as much time and effort on it as I have done. But I'm hoping to have built something that can be used in the future to overcome that obstacle. Are there any questions? I'd be willing to hear any critique. Like I said, haven't shown this to anybody in at least 5 years. And anything that you thought was unworkable, unusable, or unlikable, I'd be interested in hearing that feedback.
Well, it sounds like it take a bit of an education just to know where to get started on.
Right. There are various levels of teaching that I have set up for this to take people through the screens that are applicable to beginners, to others that are applicable to intermediate users and to advanced users. So obviously, if you're teaching somebody who has an interest but does not have any knowledge whatsoever, you would start them out with the beginning set of screens. They're also fairly standard measurements that can be taken on each screen that can be used on a default basis to help measure the importance of that screen and the importance of how that particular horse performed for that particular factor. So I'm trying to address that issue sort of systematically, but still providing a multi-purpose opportunity within the application to accomplish all of those purposes. So like I said, it's a hobby for me. It may stay as a hobby for me forevermore. I haven't figured out yet who the legatee is going to be, who gets this to further develop it. I was hoping at some point in time I'd be able to find a FileMaker developer who also had an interest in thoroughbred horse racing, who might be willing to take it over and promise to further develop it after I'm gone. I would hesitate to see all of my effort just go to waste, although I have indeed enjoyed that effort and enjoyed using what I've built for my own purposes.
What's the state, Dave, what's the state of the market, I guess you'd call it? There's racetracks all over.
Right.
People go out to the racetrack. It's a nice day out in the sun, and the horses it's a time in nature. And I think you mentioned that some of the betting aspects have shifted to other sports.
Well, first and foremost, people have stopped going to racetracks, period. That is because partly things due to COVID, partly due to time. Back when I was a young fellow and I just got married and we had kids, it was easy for me to take time away to go to a racetrack and spend an afternoon. Once we had 4 kids, that wasn't possible anymore. And I think the industry has failed to recognize what happened in the mid-'80s, where it became necessary for 2 partners to work to survive economically. And in order to do that, the 2 partners had to share responsibilities for their offspring and tasks and chores. And so very gradually it became impossible for a lot of the typical horse players who would love to go to a racetrack again to go there. And so people have resorted to, in the beginning, using off-track betting locations to place their bets. Those have also pretty much gone away and been replaced by internet wagering services, where you can literally open up a service on a given day and play 10 different racetracks all in the same day sitting at your desk. And so that has further depleted any of the interest in people attending races, except for the huge, well-known days like Kentucky Derby days or Belmont Stakes days. So that answers it from a going to the races standpoint. They've lost a lot of market share over the last 10 years because of a horse shortage. So as the industry has contracted for those reasons, breeders are not breeding as many horses. That's caused there to be a shortage of horses at racetracks. That's caused the fields of races to be populated with very low number of horses, which has also caused further disinterest because, you can't really make any money off a 5-horse race where, all of the horses are showing odds of like less than 4 to 1. So to sum it up,
you're saying you used to be able to spend all day at the races, and then now you'll be lucky to see a few races at all.
Yeah, typical. Let's say if you're a real nerd about the whole thing, you can play massive numbers of races from your computer electronically, place your bets on them, use tools like what I'm showing here to evaluate their potentials as winners. There are other more elegant programs on the market, maybe 7 or 8, that all range in the $800 to $900 cost range that are inferior to what I'm showing you here because they're just another matrix of numbers that people have to deal with. And there's a lot of data entry that has to be done by hand. I built this so that you virtually never have to touch a keyboard.
Hmm.
It's either button by button navigation or, yeah, it's basically what it does.
You tried this on an iPad yet?
I did a few years back. I did my best to convert what I had at that point in time on an iPad. And I found it frustrating, with FileMaker Go and not being able to easily transfer the format from the desktop screen to an iPad screen.
Hmm.
There were a lot of adjustments that I had to make. Plus, at that point, at least, the iPads were not supporting popovers or some of the graphic elements that I had been using. So I gave up on it. I would certainly love to go back to it because I think that's a tool that's got the mobility potential that people might find useful when they're not at home and it's sitting in front of their desktop in order to play the races. I do have a component of this that can be used on an iPad. It's what's referred to as a body language inspection screen. I built this for sales and auctions of racehorses where owners and trainers can go in and evaluate these various body language traits and score them, for a particular horse and end up with a final score with regard to those body language traits that would lead them to which horses appear physically and conformationally to have better potential as a racehorse than others.
Now, on all this information, this body language stuff, is this something you actually get to see visually, or someone just tells you what it?
No, well, the point with sales is that there are owners and wealthy owners and trainers who are physically looking at these horses under a tree in some nice pastoral location in Florida in the wintertime
Yeah.
and evaluating them and making decisions in their mind about what they like, sometimes very subjectively.
Hmm.
They'll write notes on their programs and what they like and what they don't like, what they call the pedigree sheets on these horses. This gives them an opportunity to record what they saw for a large number of animals, score them, back to their hotel and look how they scored them.
Hmm.
Go back the next day to the sale and look at them again because that's the way they do it. And they'll look at the same horse 5 or 6 times before they're going to plunk down $1 million for that horse in an auction.
Hmm.
Alternatively, this can be used. I've tried to use it myself at the racetrack paddocks, where you can see the horses before the race. Not that many people are there anymore, but it's very difficult to do when you have a moving animal moving by very quickly to examine all of these elements of confirmation and come to a final score that really has any meaning. So,
Or maybe come in handy where if you could take a video, go through the video, and then
well, now
the
that you mention
evaluation
it, I
from
have
that.
done that.
Yeah.
That the iPad app does have that, where you take a video of it and upload it right within the iPad app.
Neat.
So this was one of the more promising iPad components of the work that I've done that I thought would have value, but just the FileMaker Go just doesn't seem to be up to what I needed to get done.
Yeah.
Maybe in the future, maybe not.
Are there
So
any other questions?
I have a question for you guys. I mean, you refer to the freemium, and I have seen that advertised from time to time, and I've never seen a presence of it or plan for it to be available in the future. Am I
Yeah, it's
missing
the
something?
weirdest thing. I don't know if anybody else knows better than me, but it's like they years ago they announced that they were probably going to find some sort of freemium release of FileMaker so that people like what we're doing right now, hobbyists could just download it and make their own little personal apps. And if you
Right.
ever wanted to start expanding on that, then you would pay for like servers and things like that. So we don't know what happened. I don't anyway. But I don't even know if they still mention that. There was a form you'd fill out and so you could be the first one to be notified. Not only did I do that, but there were students at where I work who were interested, and I said, "Oh yeah, just sign up for this and maybe next year or this year." And they graduated since then.
Right.
And so,
And there's no evolution of the runtime that's ever going to come back to us, is there?
no.
I would predict no.
Yeah.
So it might happen, it might not. I have a feeling their thinking is that it would cannibalize a percentage of their market. I have a customer, for example, who could do everything that that person needs to do with a freemium. And, that's a revenue stream of X amount of dollars per year, or every couple of years is a $500 payment.
Yeah.
So basically, they're looking at their business model. It might happen. A lot of people want it to happen. Don't hold
It's
your breath.
scary. I mean, yeah, you could lose, right? It's a gamble, just like we're talking, right? You could there's an opportunity to expand business that way, but it's, it,
Well, I suppose a hosted approach is probably the only way for my legatees to go in the future to make this distributable to a large number of people at a reasonable cost. So,
yeah.
Well, like what cost were you looking at selling it for?
well, the ones that we had out there were 100, 150.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly if the freemium was available, that would be right down your alley. That would be terrific for you.
Well, I could never convince anybody at this point in time there's enough of a market out there for this kind of product that would make money for FileMaker.
Mm-hmm.
I wish it would come back to that. It may never come back to that, but such is life.
Yeah, I think it might be interesting to wait and see what the next conference shows, if they're going to announce anything there. I think it's probably still on the roadmap, right? Where you get to vote on things. They haven't told us yet that they're not going to do it, as far as I know. But the other thing I might mention that you could investigate, if it definitely makes sense if they were to introduce it at the conference next month, then that would be terrific. The it's probably not worth it to do the bundling deal. You know that they have a bundling deal where you can pay for like 100 copies to bundle FileMaker with your product, and your cost for that is $100 each. So you're having to outlay 10 grand just to get started, and you
Sure.
basically bundle it. That's one option that they have. Richard Carlton does that with his videos. He provides for like $400. He provides a copy of FileMaker and then a bunch of training videos and things like that. The other thing that you might investigate is the FileMaker for FM product, and by the folks at LiveCode, and see if nothing shows up next month at the conference, you might double check and post a query to them and ask and see. They would have to they'd look at it, and they do have an economical price that you can get started with their product and test it out, and then they have different licensing options as far as how you might end up distributing it at a reasonable process. So what ends up happening is your FileMaker database gets read by their tool. It behind the scenes, it's actually turned into a live code application, and they've done a very, very good job of reading FileMaker layouts, reading FileMaker calculations, reading and executing FileMaker scripts. It's never 100%. Testing that I've done and seen projects I've done, what I've looked at it, it's up there like 87% or so. And if you ran into some issues, you might be able to make some changes, in your database that might make it possible for it to be a viable product. But once you do that, you then have an application that you could actually distribute in an app store. Mac App Store, for instance, or whatever the case might be. Android Store, Mac App Store, because it's a live code app, and live code natively supports, Mac, Windows, Linux, iOS, Android, as far as the underlying development environment. And live code is what I use to build my software products. So it might be something that you might investigate. I probably wouldn't worry too much about it until after the conference, because, like I say, if they introduce the freemium version, you're golden at that point. That would be a very good way for you to potentially use that, depending upon how they might lock it down. But I haven't seen anything here that I think that they would lock down in a freemium version.
Yeah, it looks very standalone.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for the information and feedback. I appreciate it. I did look at the live code casually from time to time. Maybe I'll take a closer look more seriously.
Yeah. Just see. I mean, you can contact them, and there's no reason to do anything until after the conference. If there's no announcement at the conference, then feel free to check with the folks at Live Code, and just see. It's reasonably economical to license the product just so that you can do some development, and then you can work with them. They have a lot of people who have a whole variety of apps. They're apps that people aren't even making money from. And so they're willing to work with you as far as, how you might distribute it, because they want to make some money too. They got to sustain their business as well. But they're really great folks, and they will work with you and figure out, some way that you could work together.
Yeah, I'll do that. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Also, if any of you run into a developer or a company that has any knowledge whatsoever of horse racing, I'd be interested in talking to them as a potential legatee for all of this at some point in time in my non-existent future.
Interestingly enough, I actually do have some experience with that. I actually wrote an equine insurance application for a company in FileMaker. I don't have time to take on another project like that, like as a legacy project. But the things that you're talking about here, some of these terms, I do recognize from the equine insurance application that I built for a company in FileMaker, and you put a lot of work into this. So I want to congratulate you on all the work that you've put into it. You've just put a lot of good work into it to help people.
Yep, I wish I had started trying to cure cancer. It might have been done by now.
Right.
Thanks for the feedback.
All right, Tony, who do we got next?
Well, if we're going chronologically, and if David's up for it, we've got David and then Todd on the list of people, and time allowing, I'll do something. Before we start with David, we're coming to you next. Is there anyone else who's got anything else to present that wants to put themselves on the list? If you change your mind, let us know. But let's roll with David. Oh, wait, who said?
Is Alexi still here?
Yeah, I was going to ask. Hey, Alexi, do you have a ice skating app? If not, why not? Well, if you build one during David's presentation, we'll put you on the list.
I do not have an ice skating app.
She took up ice skating to get away from FileMaker.
Right. I have a very simple app that I use literally every week for my side passion related to figure skating, which is off ice fitness. I help organize several Zoom workouts every week, and I have a database that I use for that.
So if you have time to hang out, we talked earlier about doing a first come, first serve. So that would be David, Todd, and then Alexi. And then for what
I
it's
may
worth,
or may not be able to hang out that long, but you can put me on the list. If I have to go, I'll just message you.
and I have a high frequency trading application I'll show later. And I dragged it out because David talked about the front running or high frequency trading aspect of the horse market. Well, let's see how we do. David, you want to kick us off, or you want to do your thing?
Sure, yeah. Let me share, and I have a couple things I can show. I'm going to try to share my entire desktop, and we'll see how that might work. So
Looks
you
perfect to
should
me.
hopefully be able to see that. So this is
Hold on, testing 1, 2, 3. Not yet.
oh, not yet.
I think actually, Dave, handicapper, can you? How do we want to do this?
Stop share.
Yeah. Okay, that should make it easy. Okay, look at that.
Oh, okay. Now I saw something that said participants can now see your screen. Ah, okay.
Option trading calc, yellow screen. If that's you, we see it.
Yeah, okay. So I don't, my FileMaker database as a hobby to show off is not nearly as impressive as all the ones that, you folks have shown so far, but I wanted to show a little something, might be a little bit educational. So I have a number of hobbies. I like gardening. We have a 560-acre farm in Ohio, and I like to go back for several months per year to get all kinds of things done on the farm. And of course, I have my software products. But one of the hobbies that I have is stock trading. And basically, this is a pretty simple, straightforward database that I use to keep track of my stock trades. It's not really super fancy at all. I'm showing you an example. I have an inherited IRA account that doesn't have much of a balance, and my technique is to basically buy some stock in companies that are paying dividends, good-sized dividends, somewhere in the range of 7 to 14%. This is one of the trades that I have in there. This is a royalty company. This particular company pays about a 10% dividend. And my technique is, I could do nothing else and I would be just fine just getting 10% dividends. That would be a-okay. But I want to juice my returns. And I have been learning and studying about options trading. And what I usually do is I don't buy options in most cases. I actually sell options. So in accounts where I have a higher balance, I will usually sell puts on good quality companies. I just closed out of a trade in Coca-Cola yesterday for like a 97% profit of the total profit that I could have made on it. And so, good quality companies. And I'm using some trading recommendations from Stansberry, Retirement Trader. That's when I'm selling puts. For this smaller account, I'm using some of their recommendations from what they call the Income Intelligence newsletter. And so the goal here is I want to make dividends, In fact, there's an ex-dividend date coming up on the 18th. But I also want to juice my returns. So what I'll do is I buy the stock. I bought this on roughly the 24th of January. And what I'm looking at is I'm looking at the charts. And in fact, I have the if I come over here to stock charts, this was about when I actually bought this stock. And I'm noticing that, okay, well, the RSI was really high. It was like almost 68. So when the RSI is high, you can expect that generally it will go back down. And that's about what happened. And so basically, 15 days or so, it's gone down and now it's started to come back up. But what I've done is I've basically sold covered calls on it. And then this little app up here is a little live code app that I use to keep track, do some calculations. I want to compare a couple different options trades. So if I were doing a trade today, what I might do is I might sell an option at $15, 30 cents per contract, or 30 cents per share, and that would have an expiration of April 17th. Or if I push this out to July, then I'd make 45 cents. But one of the things that I really like to do is I like to look at how much I'm making. So I would make on the first trade 2% immediately. And if I put on this trade over and over again every 63 days, I could make 12% a year. Okay, well, that's pretty good. If I go with the longer trade, I could make 3% immediately, but only 7% on a yearly basis if I did this every 155 days. And so my goal here is to basically try to juice my returns. Basically, I'd want to make the dividends, and then in addition to making the dividends, if I can sell some covered calls, and I'm basically pricing the covered calls so that it will get called away. But in the meantime, I want to be able to get the dividends from it too at the same time. So I generally pick my expiration date, between the dividend dates, so I can hopefully get my dividend and get my covered call. And if it gets called away, that's fine. I buy it back again and sell covered calls on it again, over and over again. And so this is one of my hobbies. That's just showing a retirement account. I have others as well. One of the key things that I like to do is I'm looking at the recommendations from, let's say, the Retirement Trader newsletter, and then I will look at what they say, and I might actually make a modification. An example is I like to track basically my cost basis, and I don't have that here. I do probably reveal too much info in different accounts that I have. So basically, to give you an example, we sold puts on a stock called Toro. It's symbol TTC. And we've been in that trade for like 18 months or so. And we originally sold $100 puts on it, and the price of the stock has gone down to about $20, which not 20. It's gone down 20% to about $80. And but I haven't lost money, because all along the way we've sold cover calls over and over and over again. A couple $1,000 here, $5,000 there, over and over and over again. My actual cost basis, I calculated, I think it was last month, was like $82. And so they were recommending selling a $90 call. And I looked at the chart and I said, well, okay, the RSI is elevated. I don't think it's going to reach $90. I'm going to sell the $85 call, and I can make that informed decision because I go through my trading database and I add up, okay, how much, have I made each time? And I actually do that manually. I haven't automated that. And that's how I knew, okay, well, my cost basis is $82. If I sell an $85 call, which I did, then at the day that I sold that, the price of the stock was $86. So I got a nice premium. I got almost $5. So that basically reduced my cost basis down to roughly $77 now. So it doesn't matter to me if the price bounces back up and it gets called away at $85. I'm a-okay because I'm not losing money at all. I've just sold and sold and sold, covered calls on it. So that's why having the database is pretty helpful. I'm not using the database for tax purposes. In other words, I'm not like adding everything up and then putting that on my tax return. It's much better to just use your statements from your brokerage account, and you can just import that from tax cut in TurboTax software. Not kind of keeping track of it here because in the prices that I have here, you're not seeing the fees. So I might say, oh, okay, I'm selling it at 75 cents. Well, it's going to be off by a couple cents because they're going to be taking some fees there along the way. So that's really all that I had to show in terms of my hobby and, talk about options. I could also talk about what I would like to see, what I'd like to be able to implement, and how I might want to use the freemium version. If we have time and if you want to see it, I can show that and talk about that. Don't want to go too late. We're at about 7 p.m. But if people want to see that, I'm happy to continue because I talked about that before we actually officially started recording the meeting. So if you'd like to see that, I can talk about that a little bit.
Dave, can I jump in on the stock market thing?
Sure, absolutely.
So I did work on Wall Street for 9.5 years, and I had 6 jobs sequentially. And before that, I was at college, first year at University of Pennsylvania. I played poker.
Mm-hmm.
Missed my early morning classes. And ironically, when it came time to get a serious job, I called one of my poker buddies and he was working on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. And it was kind of funny because the last time I'd seen him, he was quoting football spreads. It's like points, I'll take the Giants with 3. And then the next time I saw him, he was trading the spread between Weyerhaeuser convertible preferred and Weyerhaeuser common, which would vary. And he was like, putting on the spread, so now a little bit more to the options. There's a crossover between people in the gambling world, the poker players, the bridge players, and so forth, and the backgammon players. And the option traders. And I was always very conservative. I'm not going to go against the world's best backgammon players. I like games where I could win, like a poker game that I could win was more fun for me. That said, speaking of the crossover, good story. Hopefully people find this interesting. There was a guy who figured out how to beat blackjack. Some of you might have heard of him already. His name is Edward Thorpe. And he was I believe he was like an MIT guy, mathematician. Computers had come into existence. And he did a brute force analysis of blackjack. And he discerned, just through brute force analysis, that you could beat the game of blackjack. You'd get like a 0.5% edge. And so if you played long enough and you did proper money management, you could beat blackjack. You'd eventually get kicked out of the casino, but you'd walk away with a net return. He then went on to apply his mathematical skills, applied mathematics, to options, because options had come into existence. And that was once again a mathematical model. And he was one of the people, along with 2 people, who came up with the Black-Scholes model for pricing options.
Yep.
Which I'm guessing you've heard of that as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Mm-hmm.
That all say, what I recommend, by the way, none of this is financial advice. What I recommend for anyone who wants to be in the Valve market, 2 things. 1, get a time machine, go back in time and buy Apple stock. And some of you might have already done it. Actually, I see some people. The or buy stocks that go up, and if they don't go up, don't buy them. It was ironic advice from someone. Anyway, interesting stuff. I'm not going to say too much more about options, but they're fun. And I was looking at Uber. I was going to buy Uber stock a couple days ago. I was thinking Uber stock has got a nice PE. I see that it popped. I should have stopped my day and bought some Uber stock. Anyway, interesting stuff. Beat the Dealer, great book. And then I think he did a book, Beat the Market. I'll leave it at that. Interesting stuff.
Is that the guy who like built an early computer and like had it in his glasses or something like that so that he could do this or not?
Some of the people did it. So he figured out how to beat the market, and poker was kind of my game. Although I did, and this is beyond the statute of limitations. I did because I knew the basic strategy. Depending on who I was playing with. I'll be the dealer, you be the dealer. You could actually just play the basic strategy. Stick on 16 if the dealer's got a 2. Stick on 12 if the dealer's got a 6. There were certain things that you could do that had been determined to be winning strategies by brute force simulation. It wasn't done, he didn't figure it out algorithmically. He just said, okay, I'm going to run a simulation of, every possible choice. So, and then there's a number of people over the years who have gone into casinos. And these days you got to go in with the disguise. And I'm pretty sure that, and you have to be willing to get beat up from time to time. And I do believe, I think that having a computer is like against the terms of service of casinos. I think winning is against the terms of service in a casino.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I've heard some stories about people have won. It's like, no, they're not going to pay out. It's like, what?
But final thought, when the DEF CON was at Vegas, I was the professional blackjack coach for a number of FileMaker developers. I personally did not play because the rules of the game were not advantageous.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, it's fun stuff, and as long as you have fun and either make money or don't lose money.
Right. Yeah, well, that's the whole idea of the Retirement Trader newsletter. Doc Eifrig used to work Goldman Sachs, worked with one of the gentlemen who created the Black-Scholes algorithm.
Yep.
And so basically, the nice thing about selling puts against good quality companies, which is what we do in that newsletter, is you can make money 3 different ways. If the stock goes up, you can make money. If the stock goes down a little bit, you can make money. Even if the stock goes down more and you get put the stock, well, you can basically keep selling cover calls on it. Now, there's some trades that we had one trade that was like down about 50% in Mohawk Industries. And guess what? It's bounced back up and we just keep selling cover calls on it. We've been in that trade for probably 2 years. And the whole idea of this newsletter is they might have a couple of 100 trades sequentially where they don't lose anything. How do they do that? Well, basically it's not a loss until they close it out. And so they will basically just keep selling cover calls over and over and over again to bring a losing position into a profitable position. So
by the way, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Let me just jump in and for anyone who is not in stock market, whatever, these options, these ones a call. A call is the right but not the obligation to purchase a given stock within a given time period at a particular stock price. Strike price, not. Right. And a put is it's the right but not the obligation to sell. That's right, sell. What is a put? It's the right but not the obligation to put the stock out to somebody within a given time, particularly this and that. And buying puts and calls is pretty safe. Selling calls is safe if you own the stock. Selling a put is a little bit daring because you potentially get hit by a short squeeze. And anyway, be careful out there, not investing in advice. And I got nothing more to say on this because I could go on for a couple days on this. And
Right.
we've got other stuff coming. So,
So
anyone else have any questions about where to get a time machine to go back and buy NVIDIA? Okay. Todd, how you doing over there? Are you hanging with us?
Yep, I'm still with you.
Okay. Oh, and then let me just say, future coming attractions. I do have a diagram of high frequency trading, which strangely enough seems to be applicable for this demographic of gamblers. I'll just leave it at that, gamblers, without judgment. David Simpson, as long as you've got the screen, why don't you give us a quick, what would you like to see? What was the part two?
yeah, sure.
And then we'll roll to Todd about we'll roller coaster over to Todd.
All right, very good. Okay, so what you're seeing on the screen now is what I call the code conversion workbench feature of my product. And so for a couple of years, I've had this feature. And the idea is I'm using large language models to convert this programming code from any one of a variety of input databases, FileMaker, Fox Pro, Microsoft Access, or Visual Fox Pro, into any number of like over 50 different programming languages. I've chosen FileMaker here since, of course, we're talking about FileMaker, but I have a lot of people who want lots of different programming languages. And so before we started, I basically converted this script from Fox Pro into FileMaker and produced this particular script. So this is one of the most popular features of my product because basically people ask for everything. And so I can say, okay, I can choose a variety of different vendors, OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, etc. I can choose a variety of different models, and I can choose any one of these different programming languages. And the newest feature is training. I can actually train the LLM. One of the helpful things for FileMaker is when I'm converting scripts into FileMaker, I actually don't want the LLM to create execute SQL statements. I really want it to create find requests because that's going to be a lot more useful to me. I want to be able to work through those records. And basically, or maybe I don't need to. Maybe I do the find request. I have a record set. Maybe I sort the records, and then I can say go to layout and display the records. It's more useful in a lot more places than if I do execute SQL. If I do execute SQL, then basically what will happen is I have to manipulate that data. I have to say, okay, you've given me the code, the data, and I need to loop through it, do something with it, maybe write it into a temp table, whatever the case might be. So basically with that training record, I can basically tell the LLM, here's how I want you to build the code. So that's all well and good. I'm just kind of giving you a little bit of a lay of the land on what we can do with these large language models. The thing that I would like to use potentially a freemium version of FileMaker for is another tab that's not up here in the tool. I have the idea of adding a tab called RAG, which is basically Retrieval Augmented Generation. And what that means is you can upload information to a large language model, and then you can start asking questions about it. So imagine you have an application where you've got hundreds and hundreds of scripts. With Fox Pro applications, what I often find, and I had a project like this, and one of my customers had a project like this, where they've got a legacy 30-year-old Fox Pro application, and the situation is in that application, they didn't define any relationships. You can define a relationship in Fox Pro, and it's in a file called a DBC, but most Fox Pro developers aren't using that. They basically are just writing SQL commands, and that is essentially their business logic, is it's embedded in their scripts and in the SQL commands. So if we are converting a Fox Pro application into FileMaker, it would be tremendously helpful if we could find out what all the relationships are that are embedded in all of the scripts. The scripts that I'm showing here are sample scripts that are probably not the best ones to show for that, because there really aren't any SQL commands here. But essentially, if we had a freemium version of FileMaker, what I could do is I could basically use the vector database capabilities of FileMaker, upload everything to a local copy of FileMaker, and then from there, I could ask questions. And some of the questions I'd like to ask are, tell me all of the relationships that you can find across these 500 scripts that I've given you, and have it work through those and try to figure those out, come back with the records, and then the result of those records would get passed to the LLM, and the LLM can analyze it further and hopefully be able to return to me something in a data structure, let's say some JSON or whatever, that I can then turn into relationships that I can actually build in FileMaker. FM Pro Migrator knows how to deal with relationships. I have a whole place for it there. But in this project, this is just a test project, there basically aren't any relationships. And so what I'd like to be able to do is figure out what the relationships are, use that vector database capability in the freemium version of FileMaker, combined with, my own software. And basically, I would have to probably, either process it locally with a Llama, or basically upload, to Google or whatever, in order to, get that information into the vector database, because that's a step that you have to follow. And the reason is it'd be kind of nice to have that locally on the machine. And so that is my hope for a freemium version. Without that capability, without having a free version, I can't ask my Fox Pro developers to buy a copy of FileMaker. They can't even spell FileMaker. So if it's something free that I can say, hey, go to claris.com, download it, and here is a free copy. And as long as FileMaker, as long as Claris doesn't lock it down too much, if they lock it down and don't let us have local ODBC access to it or something like that, that would be a problem. My alternative is there are open source projects which have a Docker container that the customer could download. They could run that locally, and I could perform the task that way. But that's really all that I had to show, and in ways that I would like to be able to use a freemium version of FileMaker. It is hard to say. You just never know if they produce a freemium version. Normally, the Fortune 500 companies that are converting from Fox Pro to something else, they're not normally going to look at FileMaker. But we all know from experience, one single person gets a copy of FileMaker, they start doing stuff with it, and then, it just spreads like wildfire. And so it could be very good for Claris, and I would hope that it would be. And so, basically increasing, the number of people who know about FileMaker, because, well, guess what? We have an aging user base of developers. I mean, I started with FileMaker in 1986 with the very first version when it was Neshoba Systems. So it'd be nice to bring more and more new people, into the community. But anyhow, I will basically give up the screen sharing. Did anybody have any questions?
Hey, I'll just agree that It'd be interesting if they do a freemium. Hopefully their business model will accommodate that. It'll make a lot of people out there happy, including people on this Zoom call. So
Yeah.
I guess we'll see. Um,
Now,
Thank you. That was awesome. Anyone have any questions? I'm good.
how do I stop the sharing?
Uh,
Yes.
how
Oh,
about
here, never
this?
mind. I see the
Okay.
red button.
So Todd, you're up.
All right.
Um, oh, by the way, Erica, yeah, there you go. Okay. Guess that's the answer. Is that?
Okay. Yeah, so as you can tell from my background, I love roller coasters. And so this solution started, I think, in like 2016 is when I first started working on it. And pretty much every visit to an amusement park was like, oh, it'd be nice if the app could do that or the app could do this. So I would make, notes in Notepad and then go back and work on it. So I'll just give you a quick tour. Got all the list of all the different parks that are here. I'll go ahead and pick on California's Great America, which is located there in Santa Clara, which I think you could actually see it from the parking lot of the Wedge, or it was very close anyway. So you got a couple of buttons here where you can get in and look at the park details, as far as address if you needed to look that up. Let's see where to go. I also this was another thing that I don't have any here, but if you have to travel and it's like you ate at a really good restaurant or ate at a stayed at a particular place, you wanted to record that. So when you made a repeat visit, you could go back to the same place. I have that in there. But of course, it's all about the rides. So here's a list of all of the roller coasters in that particular park. Doing some calculated text here so I can tell whether I've ridden it or not. So I've got one roller coaster that I've got to go back and ride. I can drill in here. Let's see. We'll pick Gold Striker, so you can have the coaster specs. When it was opened. The date that I wrote it. The manufacturer, get all of these specs. What I am doing, similar to what you were doing, Eric, for some of your information, there's a rcdb.com, which is the roller coaster database, has a list of every roller coaster I think that's ever existed, whether it's still standing or not. So I'm able to go to that URL and just do a insert from URL and do a data scrape to get some of this information. Most of the time it works. Sometimes it doesn't. So I have to go in and, edit the numbers manually. And then I'm in here with some configuration about how the train is laid out and the height restriction, using the get location functions here to get the actual location of the entrance. One of the features I'd like to add for my 2025 version is that when I go to record a new ride, it'll check my location, see which roller coaster I'm closest to, so I don't even have to pick the roller coaster. I can just say I want to ride the closest one, and hopefully it all comes out okay. And then from there, whenever I'm ready to ride it, I just click that button. It starts the ride. Obviously gives me the ride date. The time that I entered the queue, it's going to keep track of that in seconds. Then I have a little card window that opens here that I can say, okay, I'm going to ride this one in the front seat. When I'm ready to ride, I click a button. It captures the time. And then when I finish it, I can give it a rating and say, okay, yeah, that was awesome. And then I'm ready to go on for my next ride. And so that's pretty much all of the the data collection that I do. But then I have spent quite a bit of time on some of the reporting things. So if I want to see, okay, what did I ride today? I've got some shortcuts here for some of the common things, but I can say, okay, yeah, again, pulling all those specs that I grabbed. And I can look at it by rides. I can get a summary, or if I want to take a look at, my lifetime credits, where it lists from the most recent on down, breaks it down by, the chart, the coaster type, the style, and then it lists the top. I think I have like the top 20 by speed, height, length, and then the number of inversions. So, and I think the last one here for the reports is like the ride summary. If I want to look at what I've ridden, let's see, to do a custom range, we'll go. It's telling you like number of coasters that I've ridden, total number of miles.
The FileMaker charts.
Those are a FileMaker charts, yes. And so I played around with a little bit, say, okay, what do I turn down to, what label gets turned down to like 1 point height, just to hide it so I have more room for the chart itself. And then I do have a feature in here that if I want to brag and send the report to Ronnie to let him know how many roller coasters I've ridden, I can just click the send report button and it generates the email and sends it out. So
he doesn't have a copy of this app.
he has one of his own. I can't remember what all of the features that he has. I know there's been a few times where like we've ridden coasters together, so I've either sent him the list of what I've ridden, or he sent me the specs so that we can get them into the our respective databases and things. So
This is really good, and this is very good looking. You might have mentioned this is all runs on FileMaker Go based on the screen
correct.
size.
Yeah, I mean obviously you did the development locally, which I didn't bother to plug my phone in. Then share the screen from my phone. But yeah, it's you have it on the phone.
So everything you see here can be done, and this is for Dave Handicapper. Everything that you see here can be done. All the functionality you see works on FileMaker Go.
Nice.
It's a bit of a separate animal.
Yeah.
And there's a white paper on how to program and Go. Certain things don't work, certain things do, and enough work to do what you see.
Yeah.
Looks good.
So yeah, and I have a couple of things. I don't use it a whole lot. Where if I like, am inspired and want to take a picture of, the park or the ride or something, I can link it to the appropriate coaster or amusement park or whatever.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you had any media inputs for that.
Yeah, I mean, mostly I think it's primarily like I can insert like here, it's, did a lot with the custom menus, or the popovers and then popovers with a slide control on it, so you get the different menu. But so, insert the park photo. Well, that is not what I wanted to do.
That works.
Yeah. Oh, and I also collect comic books. That's one of the other ones that I is.
Oh.
Oh, and then, like I said, I originally set it up to where there was going to be a web interface or the Go interface, and then data entry screens for like desktop. And I realized that the screens that I was writing and working on for the Go interface work just as well for what I needed to do on desktop. So that's why this layout looks like that. But then I do have a table here for versioning just so I can keep track of, what I did, what I changed. And then when you actually log into the database and switch over to the iOS, which it starts here on this screen, that is where this number down here comes from, as it pulls that in and says that's the the version of Coaster Tracker that you're using. So but yeah, like if you go in like to the ride itself, You can insert a coaster photo. You can look at your current ride. You can run some reports.
Where do you live, by the way?
Where do I live? I live just in the Western Pennsylvania. So I live an hour by amusement park. I'm an hour from Kennywood, or 2.5 hours from Cedar Point. So,
Uh, oh yeah, you got some distance, huh? Try to
yeah,
get to some coasters.
yeah. But like 2 years ago, I drove from here to upstate New York to ride a roller coaster before it closed forever and back in the same day. So
Wow.
I have a problem. But anyway,
Yeah. Yeah. Six Flags.
so
I know I can't believe I spent my whole life I never went to Magic Mountain that's down in Southern California, and then when I
oh,
finally went there,
that is one of the parks I have not been, so it is on my bucket list.
blew my mind when I was riding their coasters. It's like these are just a whole nother level. Because Great America is like, you probably know.
Yeah.
There's
We did a swing through Northern California last summer, so I got Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk,
no, that's fun.
um, Santa Clara there at the California's Great America, and then we went on up to Six Flags Discovery Kingdom.
That one's good. Their coasters are superior as far as Northern California goes, but
So,
yeah, then Magic Mountain just quite a bit
yeah.
more than that even.
But pretty much every family vacation is okay. Like, what amusement park is close by that I haven't visited yet that we can swing through to get a few rides in at least. So, but
Oh, so you get your speeds on there. Do you have like G forces and stuff too? That they
yeah, I don't have the G forces.
It's not on the database, the
It's
roller coaster database.
I mean, it's one of those. I mean, some rides they do have it, like especially the newer rides. They give you all the specs and they actually like call out the different elements as far as a corkscrew or an Immelman turn or all of
Yeah.
those terms and things like that. And some don't, and it's like I'm not going to worry about tracking that necessarily.
Mm.
Like I said, I think we talked there, but like one of the settings that I have is that I can turn the capture sensor data on or
Oh,
off.
you do actually have that. Okay.
And then I can set the the accuracy and what the timeout was. And it's one of those things where it was definitely a battery hog.
Mm.
And also it seemed like I would have it sampling, every 3 seconds or 5 seconds or whatever the default time limit was, but it wasn't updating fast enough. So like if you're going up or down, it would see like the same level over multiple intervals, and then it would get the big jump. You wouldn't actually really see you know, like the plot of your track or
Yeah, it
whatever.
seems like you'd need split seconds just to know what the peak was, right?
Yeah, yeah. And since I couldn't really figure out how to analyze the data once I was collecting, it's like, well, I'll save my battery and just enjoy the ride and
You just have to
go.
bring more batteries
Yeah.
and backup batteries.
So, but
That's fun.
Very cool. Good looking
yes.
app.
Yeah, I guess just one thing because it's one of those things that you all have like the hobby databases, and that's where you kind of experiment and see, okay, what can I do? What new feature
Hmm.
can I add in? And those kinds of things. Uh, One of the things that I was um, kind of excited about is like, you drill in and you can get into the coaster specs. Well, I wanted to have like a back button. And so I was able to figure out as I'm doing the navigation to set up like a queue of, okay, I went from this layout to that layout. So if I go back, I want to go to this one,
Hmm.
which I don't know that I've ever actually used in a production database, but not that it was hard to figure out, but I did give myself a pat on the back for figuring it out. And then it does a default that if you get back to here, it makes sure that it knows that, okay, this is the starting point for, any of the
Nice.
navigation and stuff. So,
Yeah, I saw that you've been to DevCon, right?
yes.
Before. Yeah, you ever see the DevCon to Go app that
Yes, yes.
yeah,
Which I
I
hear
think
is
he
making a
had that
return
feature
this
at some
year.
point.
Yeah.
There was on the back button functionality, the people out as a consortium did something called Backmagic a while ago.
Okay.
Got removed from the internet. The good news here is that there's a gentleman out of England whose name is Paul, and his is called Browser Nav, and it's very good, certainly worth a look. And he's actually got two versions. And maybe I'll drop a link as soon as I find it. Browser Nav.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, does it require script triggers at all, or?
It depends on good question. It depends on what you're doing. It doesn't require let's answer it this way. It does require script triggers if you want to store the location within a tab structure or a slider structure. If it's just the layout, it's quite sufficient. And I hope I get this right. It's quite sufficient to not have a script trigger per layout. If you want the back button to be able to go to an object that's within a tab, a slider, or nested hierarchy or whatever, then a script trigger per layout. Like I said, there's two different flavors.
Was Todd, yours was using script trigger as well? To capture the layouts it's been to, or?
I can't remember if I was using script triggers or if it was something because I was always going to a layout from a script that I just like added it on, as part of the navigation script.
Oh, okay.
It may not be that elegant to use the script triggers on like layout load and stuff.
Oh, maybe what you're doing is better. I tried the script trigger thing, and it just really got to be a hassle with larger applications with lots of layouts.
Yeah.
And then when you're running scripts that are going from layout to layout, it was always popping up. It was always running that script. What have we got? Anybody left?
I have something, two
Okay.
things to show. Give me 1 minute because I just found the browser nav from, pretty sure his name is Paul. But in any case, here's his website. You can look up his name. Nice guy. Okay, and browser nav, the link kind of tells the tale. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. So I got two things. I have two things. One, in a kind of a stretched effort. Whoops. Hold on. That's a scary looking database, if you ask me.
Oh, it's a scary resolution too there.
Hold on. I think I got something that's going to work here. Let's go there. Hold on. Let me stop sharing just in case I have something that I'm not supposed to show. Be with you just 1 second. I had a window open. Okay. Now I move that window somewhere visible. Hide everything else. I have a habit of dragging windows down to the bottom, and then I'm like, where to go?
I'm trying to figure out what David's looking at. He's looking way up there.
Okay. I now have something to show you.
I have a big monitor. It's sitting above my laptop.
Yeah. He's been looking at spiders in the ceiling for all I could tell.
So a bit of an experiment. I didn't tweak my screen resolution. I do have the ability to do that, but I'm hoping that by zooming this omnigraphal document, that works. Does that?
For me, it looks great just as it is. I don't know if other people.
And it looks okay for everybody? I see Todd.
Yep.
Thumbs up. Good. Okay. So anyway, here's the stretch. What's my hobby? My hobby is making infographics. What's my hobby? My hobby is FileMaker. Pretty boring. Sorry. No, actually exciting. So two things to show. One, high frequency trading coming up. But right now, a couple days ago, I had a situation where I hadn't done an infographic in a while. Anyone who knows me knows that myself and my coding partner have done quite a few infographics, and FileMaker 18 shipped data file scripts. There's a suite of about 10, give or take, data file scripts. Shipped them in 18. They work in the current version, and I hadn't I'd used them. What I hadn't done is kind of, to my satisfaction, came up with a set of coding patterns that I could use forever. Like, in other words, like beautiful code, like working code is great, beautiful code is better. So I did a version 1, which I could show you. But then, so this is omnigraphal. So two purposes for this presentation. One is to show you a useful diagram. And by the way, send me an email. I'll drop my email in the chat and I'll send you your own copy. So purpose is A, this is useful as a visualization of the data file scripts and how you might use them skillfully. Secondarily, it's a little bit of a, hey, here's how OmniGraffle works. OmniGraffle is a terrific program for doing flowcharts, entity relationship diagrams, all kinds of visual things. It's got a great tool set. Now, these are, this is OmniGraffle in the design. If I were to save this out to a PDF, these would all become clickable links. So I make them blue. The little wizardy things goes away when I save it out to a PDF. So I'll just start from the top, and just to show you that it goes to a web page. Not going to bother zooming in, but so get file exists. I'm doing for lack of a better term, the signature. On the upper right, I'm trying to come up with a bunch of the variable names that I would use consistently. I did read a lot of blog posts. I would just say Google FileMaker data file scripts, and you can see who's done blog posts, and you can decide who did a good job. One thing that's a little bit interesting is just different names. I try to use names that are semantic, like file path is a good name. I wouldn't call it file, because files have names. So I like file path, file name. Those are different. File exists, file ID. It's a little bit, and then I took the signatures, which I just basically copied from the Claris FileMaker website, and I changed them in a way that I think is more expressive, like get file exists, data text. Actually, to be honest, if anyone from FileMaker is listening, I don't understand why you say data text, because it says over here is the path. That don't look like a path. Maybe someone else knows. Maybe is that, if it's in the document folder, is that like a default? Am I wrong to think that data.txt does not look like a path?
Probably just local to the application then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what it means. But I don't even have to care, because I'll just go with file path. And somewhere in the code from FileMaker, they have examples that I like a little bit better, where they say get document folder and change log. And I would assume I can write it out to temp, I can write it out to desktop, I can hit the server, and so forth and so on. This is, by the way, only V2. Usually these get to V6 before I'm like happy, satisfied. Then I laid these out from top to bottom in sort of the sequence of the flow that you would use them. You might say, does the file exist? Close data file. Nice little feature here. This, you don't need to know the IDs of you don't need to know the file IDs of everything, because you can use a wildcard and close everything. It's in the docs, but I saw some people miss that.
I didn't know that.
Well, there you go. This presentation already is create data file, create folders on. I haven't built this out. Like I said, version 2. So you have to create it, then you open it. You would error trap, because maybe the data file you're writing to is opened by a different app. You read and write. So I put these together. The reading and the writing has things like 64 megabyte max for read and write. You can write, and get beyond 64. And then there's bytes, which I don't think comes into play that much, export container. And then there's UTF-8 and UTF-16. And there's some nuance, which I haven't documented, but it has to do with reading and writing. So I would put these things on the diagram in proximity, because I think having these things just in a help page is great. It's a little bit textual and it's complicated. So I like to have, some visual representation. This goes with that. Over here, we have get the data file position. You can get and set the data file position. So I was doing a little schematic of 0. It starts at 0 and there's a position, which is one of the variables we have. And then let's see, after you open, maybe you read, maybe you write, maybe you do this, less likely, but you could. Read and write is bread and butter. And then when you're done, you close it. And then if it's closed, you can delete. If it's not closed, you can't delete. Rename. I don't know if you can rename a file that's open. But I will. By version 3 or 4, I will know for a fact. Then you can get file size. These say data. File size is more generic because you can get the file size of any file. Data file, there's a little bit of an overlap between data file script steps and what's that other thing? File exists. Anyway, this is, and then, but wait, there's more. There's another feature that also showed up in 18, which I think is, I know for a fact it's underutilized. And the reason I know that is because I personally am underutilizing this feature. And I suspect other people. So this is set error logging. So it's really, and I've used it, just not as much as I should. It gives you 8 fields, 7 that are, baked in, and then 1 custom debug info. And then I had 2 thoughts on this. One, hey, there's a single field custom debug info. What would I like to put in there? And so I did a custom function and I put it up on the Brian Dunning and I named it with this, whatever that is, @ symbol. And, I'm lobbying the entire universe to use custom functions with the @ because you get a visual pop. A script comment, I put a little underscore because it looks different. And here it is. It's up. It's free, obviously. And it is basically a huge number of get functions plus a little bit of fancy stuff to get the script ID, which is obviously different than the number of the script in the sequence. Also obviously different than the name. So I'm doing script ID and lat ID because if I was logging the stuff to a help system, then I get, I'm storing the persistent thing along with the name. So if I rename the script for whatever reason, I can still figure out what script generated the help ticket or generated the error and so forth and so on. And so that's a nice custom function. In my opinion, it's nice. And it writes out to script error log. I looked the other day, that's UTF-8. I'll put that there later. And I was thinking that any kind of custom logging, any kind of logging that I'm doing, I could just use this. I think I saw one of the developers out there saying that they're just using this for logging because you just make a gratuitous error. You just like do something that's an error, like make a layout, go to the layout, delete the layout. That's an error. So you can log just like that and boom, it'll write to here. Or you could do custom stuff. And I would think, well, I'm going to make all my things 8 columns. This is, by the way, a JSON. I didn't mention it, but let's say it. Let's go back. This is the output of this custom debug info is a JSON object. It's a let statement, just easy code, tildes, of course. JSON set element. And so it's a big JSON. So it's structured data that it fits in one column, but then it can be parsed later into individual columns. So I thought that was clever, custom function, so forth. Okay, so that's that. Anyway, it's only version 2. So infographic, Omnigraphal, gives you that, and you could just make a link. And then it does export to PDF. Take my word, it makes a PDF with clickable links, which is pretty cool. And that's it. That's what I did. I started it 2 days ago because I just wanted to make sure that I had something to show, even if it wasn't game. But the whole poker thing, that used to be a hobby, and stock trading used to be. Any questions on this before I go to high frequency trading?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna
Very nice.
It's useful. It's what I do to kind of wrap my head around a feature. Um, and this was one of them. And there's others. I'm going to stop sharing for a second, and then I'm going to bring up my other thing, and then that's all it from me. So I'm actually going to say this in a kind of a bit of a coy fashion here. Share my screen. So I wasn't intending on showing this because Dave Handicapper said mentioned that there's people who are using what sounded to me like high frequency methods to interact with the betting markets, which essentially stock markets are their investments. They sort of have a certain gambling aspect to them. They're also a way of establishing capital formation for productive purposes. People have money and then entrepreneurs need money. Stock markets can be beneficial to society. They can also be a little bit of a waste of resources, in my opinion. Other things could be done. So I did work on Wall Street for 9.5 years, I think. And besides the floor of the stock exchange, I also worked as a buy-side trader, which is I was a trader, what's called a buy-side trader, portfolio manager. Portfolio was a $1 billion total. There were actually two funds. And my job was portfolio manager walk in and you say, I want to buy a lot of Nike or Bolt Baranek or Guilford Mills or whatever, a lot of little small cap stocks. And my job was to go into the market and try and purchase the stock without getting ripped off, without getting front run, ripped off, if you will. And this was back in the day before high frequency trading came. And so apparently in 2000, no, I don't know when I did this. I did this like 8 years ago. I decided it would be fun to do an infographic explaining how high frequency trading works. It's actually pretty complicated, so take a deep breath. It's kind of whimsical because in the FileMaker Fanatics podcast, episode 1, we had some jokes. I made the assertion that as a buy-side trader, my job, it was an insurance fund, a pension fund essentially for widows and orphans, which is actually quite true. And so I had to interact with Wall Street, whose interest in widows and orphans was not on the same level as I. So in my little whimsical thing, it's the pension fund for widows and orphans. It's a good name. All right. So they need to buy 1,000 shares of a stock XYZ, not a real stock, and they want to buy it at a price of $20.04. When I worked on Wall Street, stocks trade in eighths and quarters, halves, and even teenies, which would be sixteenths. Nobody had the time to say a 16th. Those were called teenies or teenths or steenths because everything was like, it's 20 and an eighth bid offered at 20 and a quarter, or 20 and 3 teenies offered at a quarter. And, the size would be 5,000 bid for, 1,000 offered or whatever. And the whole skill set was being able to talk fast. Okay, so I got to buy 1,000 shares of XYZ at 20 and a quarter. Now, currently, and I think this is still true, there's multiple exchanges. So in this particular example, I've got 4 exchanges and I've got individual markets at the 4 exchanges. At this exchange number 1, the market is, and I'm going to say offered at 2 pennies, bid 2 pennies, offered at 4. Size is 200 shares by 300. Over at this exchange, it's, actually, just for simplicity, I made it 2 pennies by 4. On each and every single exchange, different sizes. Now I got to buy 1,000, and there's 300 offered here. Is that the first market I hit? Yeah, 300 offered there, 400 offered there, 200 in there, and 4, 3, 2, and 1 is 10. Obviously, I should be able to fill my order for 1,000 because it's all out there. But wait, T is time. It's the time interval. So I've got different time intervals: 2, 4, 6, 8. Who do we appreciate? No, 2, a time of 2. And the t is just a variable. It could be a second. It could be a tenth of a second. And the high frequency traders, they have the fastest pipes. That's what they've done. They've taken advantage of the laws of physics, and they have leased fiber optic, and they've set up trading offices in close proximity to the major exchanges. And they're trading at the speed of light. And, I was trading out of Newark, and the exchange might be, someone with a faster pipes and or closer proximity would have a faster pipe. So let's see what happens. So I'm connecting here with 2T. The green is my connections because I'm green. Green is good. So I've got T of 2. So when I'm here, the high frequency traders see that somebody lifted the offer or bought the stock at 4. And so I filled 2 out of, take it back. I filled 3 because I got here. I don't think they see me until I hit the exchange, but they have faster pipes. So they have a 1T connection from here to here, and they have a 2T to here and a 3T to there. And that's sort of realistic. So if I'm here at 2 and they see 1, and it takes me 4 to get here, they get here 1 second before. I'll use T equals a second. They get here 1T before. So they actually take the offering at 4. And they do that because they know there's a buyer for 6 and 4. So as we say in the market, they're stopped out at 4 cents. In other words, if it goes up, they just watch it go up. If it goes down, they hit my bid at 4. So they're basically, as Dave Simpson said, you can actually, with high frequency trading, you can set up a risk-free trade because you see things faster because you got faster pipes. And then, okay, the red, they're high frequency trading. Oh, and I called them parasite partners, not a complimentary name. They're collated inside the exchange or in close proximity. And here's the math. Get there in 3, faster than 4, and bought the stock. And, that's sort of algorithmic front running. It's legal. It's legal. Hey, I should do this. Looks like fun. Looks like, okay, so here we go. And then looks like an investor. Oh, and this is in reds. Therefore, it's the high frequency computer thinking. This is a computer talking. It says, looks like an investor bought 300 at 4 cents, $20.04, and bid $20.04 for 700. And whether I'm buying limit or market doesn't really matter. Actually, market would mean they would just instantaneously flip it. Although they'd have an algorithmic calculation as to whether to sell it to me immediately or just kind of hold it a little bit longer. But they could, if it was market, I'd buy at 4 and, fill the balance at 5 and 6, and they'd make a penny. And they do it enough times, it's profitable. Okay, so it looks like an investor bought this and that, run faster, aka front run. The exchange is 2, 3, and 4. Buy what's offered at 203, although I didn't have anything offered. There might be something sold in the middle, even though it's showing 2 cents, 4 cents. Sometimes you buy and someone will sell it at 3. And then you flip it at 4. If it goes up, sell higher. If it goes down, hit the bid because you're stopped at 4. Anyway, that, I would say most people, that's pretty complicated, but you might have understood it. I don't want people to miss sleep.
They're trying to get out in front of you, and basically, I've heard of Goldman Sachs actually doing that with their own customers, where Goldman Sachs is the market maker, and they're supposed to be buying on behalf of their customers. They go out, they buy it on the market, then they sell it to the customer who's their customer, and they make a few cents just fulfilling the order to their customer. And I don't like that because it's like, wait a minute, if you're Goldman Sachs and I'm your direct customer, wait, you're making money off me? Wait a minute. But yeah, I've heard that they do that.
To which I will say, having traded with Goldman Sachs, in regards to that story, I will say no comment. And you could read into that what you want. The toughest market to trade on was the over the counter because you didn't have visibility as to who was doing what. I would say they all would do it to one extent or another, and you were limited basically by you had to watch the tape if there was a tape. New York Stock Exchange had a tape you could watch that gave you visibility. They had traders on the floor for real. You could see them. I would say, and this is not investment advice, for most of us, the solution to avoid the high frequency trading stuff is buy shares 100 at a time, buy
Mhm.
what are called round lots. Because
Mhm.
if I buy 1,000, I'm getting picked apart here. If I
Mhm.
bought 1,000, most of the premiums, it used to be that, if you bought 100 shares, you'd pay $70 stock premium. Then the market seems to have shifted whereby you put an order in and the commission is like ridiculously low and or zero, and they make money on the spread and the bid ask because they're
Mhm.
like, if they get a sell and a buy at the same time, they can just like buy at 2, sell at 4, and the exchanges pay for order flow.
Mhm.
So the workaround, as far as I can tell, is, just buy 100 shares. Like if I bought 100 shares of Uber that I was looking at the other day, and it's 80, so 100 shares is 8,000. Um, it's not like I have so much money. Like 8,000 is like somewhat significant amount of money to me, and most of us, I guess. I'm not looking to, Warren Buffett has got a bigger issue, but he could just like buy 100 shares every 5 minutes, and
Mhm.
then that would limit the market impact. And then let's see, final thought. What I think would be fun is like, plus there's S&P's got 500. Just buy one of everything. And you get like annual reports, set up a library. You can see what's going on in the world. You get annual reports about every industry. Um, and your postal person will curse you as they arrive.
Right.
And then you can take the old issues and compost them. Anyway, so that's my high frequency thing. And that's all I got.
Well, one of the things that I like is I like doing business with Fidelity. I have both Schwab and I have Fidelity. I really like Fidelity better. Um, but one of the great things about Fidelity, and Schwab will do this too, is they have what they call price improvement. So I was buying back those puts on Coca-Cola yesterday. And, I always do a limit, of course. I'm willing to offer 3 cents. Every one of those they filled at 2 cents, the Fidelity. And what I've done is I've looked at it in the past, and the price improvements that Fidelity has given me in a typical year have actually exceeded the commissions that they charge. It's like, wow, that's pretty good. Um, and Schwab will try to do that too. I really like Fidelity. They treat.
I think Fidelity is a good company. They have 7 offices in New York, and it's
Mhm.
nice to have a physical bricks and mortar presence because essentially, if you have a financial institution where you have savings, it's nice to know that they have a building
Yeah.
as opposed to, even if it's a company that begins with the letter V,
Right.
which is second biggest out there.
Right.
They don't have an office. I'm like, who do I go? Whatever. I think Fidelity's good. They also have alerts so that when my uh, when my order for pumpkin seeds goes through, I get an alert that the payment was processed.
Mm.
Um, and by the way, I just want to say something because I was trading stocks for five. I was a upstairs buy side trader for 5 years, and it was fun. And we hit our targets against our comparable fund. We were competing. We were benchmarked against the Russell 2000 index fund, which was small cap, and we exceeded them every year. And that was our bonus target, and we went 5 for 5. And I like to think that some of it was because after the first day, I got smart. I didn't do anything unethical. Like we weren't allowed to dump stock on the street. We weren't allowed to get them short or get them long, call 10 brokers because they all talk. Um, so we had to do ethical, which was kind of unfortunate considering but even then, just by trading somewhat smart, by just watching the flow, I'm pretty sure it was good for like 1% or 2.
Hmm.
Well, let's just say 1. It didn't matter, it was, anyway, that was fun for a while. And then I left. But it was fun. The, just one thought, and then maybe other people have some, none of this is an investment advice because I think that's illegal or whatever. With limits, I tend to go in with market. because if I put a limit order in above the market or below the market, and somebody, like, if it goes up, I miss it, and if it goes down, I get hit. So
Mm.
I'd rather get in and get out. It's kind of like the horse racing question that Eric was asking. It's like, and this is for Dave, a question that I held back. It's like, if I'm at the track and there's a stock that's 5 to 1 at that time, I'd like to be able to go and say, I'm going to put $100 down, and then, okay, with the understanding that I get 500 back. Now, I know that if enough people bet on and I'm going to say that's a bit of a long shot. I don't know well, anyway, if enough people bet on the long shot at 5 to 1, the racetrack is going to algorithmically change the odds, right?
Relative to all the other horses.
Because that's what bookies do.
Right.
They buy and sell, and they adjust the football spread or the odds such that their book is balanced. And like if I go 5 to 1, I want to walk away from the window knowing 5 to 1. And if it shifts later to 2 to 1, I'm like, but I bet when it was 5 to 1. But I don't understand why they would shift the odds post facto, post beto, or whatever it's called.
Well, the system, the technology can't keep up with the speed. So
I could see that.
These quants are sending in thousands of bets in microseconds, and they can't reflect that to the public that quickly. So the race goes off, and they can only show it after the race is won.
Okay.
If I were into gambling, that would take the fun out of it for me. If I got burnt like that.
Well, buy and hold is a really good strategy. Although I will say, there's every now and then, I saw Uber the other day, and the price earnings was like 12, and I thought, wow, that's really low price earnings. And I thought, Uber seems to be a company that would be favorably positioned from that just, it looked like a good PE. Maybe I'll leave it at that.
Yeah,
I would have wish I'd gone back in time and bought Google.
I had a chance at the IPO. They let you bid. You got to bid on a certain price, and they came back, and I think it was like $85 a share that you could have bought it. It was like a reverse. What was it? A reverse
Dutch auction.
And so I think I bid $20, $10 or $20. Well, it ended up at the reverse auction point that, we came up with a price as a result of reverse auction of $85. So I didn't buy any. And it's like,
in hindsight, yeah.
And I knew that they were a very profitable company, just making money hand over fist, and they didn't really even need the money, to go IPO. That's what a lot of people, go IPO is because they need the money. They didn't even need the money. But basically, yeah, I should have bought some.
Well, yeah, hindsight, like buy stocks that go up. If they don't go up, buy them. I think that was Will Rogers. And it's a joke in there. If you say it to yourself slowly, buy stocks that go up. If they don't go up, don't buy them.
Right.
Like I said before, I could go on and on about stocks. Hey, Eric. And I should say, anybody else got anything they want to show, or should we talk about the next meeting, or we should tell people to go to the YouTube channel? We should tell people to do what, Eric? What should we tell? What we suggest to people that they do?
Well, we're thinking we were going to have Nick.
Nick, Nick Orr, we're in negotiations with Nick Orr from Base Elements fame.
And there's Robert. No.
Yeah, Robert's got something quite interesting about. He's got Robert No, it's pronounced No. Who you might know from a lot of user groups. He's got he put together a list of like 30 features, like, hey, are you using it? Is kind of the theme. And we might flesh out the topics with, obviously talk about how to use it.
Yeah, like why and why not?
I am using the data file scripts, and I'm going to use them more and more now that I know how to write them. Engage is coming up. Todd's presenting.
Wait, yeah, what is it on?
That's execute FileMaker data API script step.
Oh, okay.
It's 9 a.m. on the Wednesday session, so we're one of the 5 or 6 sessions in that time slot. So,
and tomorrow is the California people. I think it's a little, I shouldn't say that. It's the
California.
FM disc, which is the Los Angeles
Yeah.
group, which is galactic these days. All groups are galactic. Pittsburgh is meeting. Todd, you guys are meeting physically, right? On site?
yeah, we do a
Hybrid.
hybrid meeting. We meet on site, but then we always do a Zoom so that anybody that can't be there in person can join. We actually ended up going all remote for our meeting last week because the restaurant we meet in had a power failure, which luckily I found out with enough time to get back home.
They had a power failure?
Yeah, they
Thanks.
had. I think we were concerned about the winter weather in our area that we thought that was going to keep us away, but things cleared up and we were going to be able to get to the our meeting location. And I pulled into the parking lot and there was 2 other cars, and it's like something's not right here. And then found out that there was some kind of electrical issue that the restaurant had been closed all day, and
But did you end up meeting on time or no?
we did. Yeah, as I managed to get home with about 10 minutes before the meeting was supposed to start, because we get together about an hour ahead of time just to eat. And then we start the meeting at 7,
Makes
so
sense.
it was easy to get back and jump on the meeting and all of that and everything.
Cool. And we haven't heard from John. I don't know if you're listening. John, hope you enjoyed the show.
I am just lurking. Thanks.
Okay.
All good.
You didn't have anything you were going to share, did you?
I did not. Just here to learn.
Oh, okay.
So, all right, Eric, I got nothing. Any other announcements you want to make? I will say one thing just to put it out there, and maybe someone will pick it up. I'm thinking we're close to the day when the various presentations from the various user groups, the transcripts will be skillfully processed by AI such that the conversations that we're having at these user groups will be turned into searchable web pages. Because I would say there's so many features out there in this FileMaker platform that it's hard to learn it all in a efficient way. And I think the more each individual FileMaker developer knows, the better for the market. I don't think we have captured the entirety of the market. I think that the FileMaker market could grow from where it's at. There's 8 billion people on the planet, and they're not all using FileMaker. And they could.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, we all like it. I mean, even like a lot of the examples we had here today, and even like, I've done little reports and things out of FileMaker, and it's like, oh, now if I want to share this with somebody, what am I going to do? I have to export the whole thing to Excel, and because everybody's got Excel or Google Docs or whatever, Google Sheets, and they can view it. But there's not really anything like that for FileMaker where I can just hand over my FileMaker file and anybody can just open it up. If it was ubiquitous like that, that would be really nice. Like the way you could open a PDF.
Yeah, I'm hoping that they can figure out how to do the freemium one. Obviously, we want them to do it in such a way that they don't lose money. We want them to stay in business. And I'm hoping that they can figure out a way, because, yeah, if it was ubiquitous, wow, it's so many more people could use it. It's kind of interesting. I get chat sessions from India and all over the world. And I until recently, was still getting chat sessions from students in India in college who wanted to get a free copy of Visual Fox Pro, which has not been shipping for at least 15 years. But because their instructor was trying to teach them how to do database development on something that's not even shipped by Microsoft anymore.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, you must be kidding. This is what your instructors are teaching you? Oh my goodness.
It's what they know, and they don't.
Maybe
and
that's
the
what they
students
had
don't know
copies
that
of.
it's not something to know anymore.
Right. And so they could be so much better off learning FileMaker, something that's a great product that's actually shipping. And it's like, wow, imagine opening up that marketplace for
And a really shallow learning curve. It's like yeah.
Right, exactly. And so yeah, I mean, that's just something that came to mind just, as we're talking. It's like, yeah, there are people, and obviously we know that people in India, they cannot afford to pay the retail price of FileMaker, but that's understandable. But boy, I tell you what, if we had a whole crop of people in India who knew about FileMaker, then there'd be consulting opportunities for them. One company in India that I have paid for work, they love doing FileMaker work because they can make more money on FileMaker because it is a rare specialty compared to your regular PHP development, for instance.
The one thing I'd entertain is like, well, what about because there is there's that developer subscription, right? It used to be only like $99.
Yes. And by the way, I had somebody from India within the last week who they wanted my software. And it's like, I know that if you're in India and you're in India, you can't afford my software. So what I said is, I'll tell you what, you're a consultant. I'll make my software available to you for free. And here's how. Tell your customers you need my software to do your project. Well, the guy did that, and within 15 minutes, an order came through. He said, "Okay, I've got your software. Now, how do I get FileMaker?" Because he had already installed the previous version of FileMaker, and he just had to do a conversion project. That's all he had to do. And his trial had elapsed. I said, well, go back to your customer, have them order the FileMaker developer, the FDS for $99, and I sent him a link to that, and he didn't ask me anymore. So that's what his customer must have done. So that is a good potential option also for somebody who needs an economical copy of FileMaker, and it does put revenue in Claris's pocket. And you don't have to be embarrassed about referring someone to order it. It's like, hey, making $99 is better than making nothing. So that generated some revenue.
Well, this has been great, fellas, but it's way past my bedtime here on the East Coast. So
I understand. Yeah,
I'm going to disconnect, but it was great. Hopefully I'll see you guys at future meetings here now that I found you. So,
All right.
Likewise, good to see you.
All right. Have a great evening, everyone.
All right. Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Night.
All right. I guess I can probably end the recording now too.